right, so I usually do this the morning after Inside Star Citizen comes out, but this seems like a pretty important one, so I thought I'd do this before we went to sleep. Let's look into persistent entity streaming and see what CIG is saying about it, whether good or bad. I look forward to the information we get in this episode. This could tell us a lot about what's going on for the rest of the year, but we won't get our hopes up too high. Let's just hope it's not bad news.
Hey all, Space Dad here, coming to you from a secret facility that we'll be talking more about next quarter. Now, Alpha 3.18
Ominous.
has a whole lot of features that players have been anxious for updates on. And while we'll get to all of them like we always do before this quarter is out, we wanted to take this week's show and slow things down a bit for an uninterrupted, unabridged chat about persistent entity streaming. What it is, how it's been going, where it's at now, and what's coming up next.
Solid.
And we'll get back to our normal features next week. But for now, please join me in welcoming Benoit Beauséjour, CTO of our partners at Turbulent, for what we're calling our very first PES report.
Here we go. It's like a pillar talk.
Benoit, welcome back to ISC.
Bad
To start
memories.
things off, give us a nickel version of what persistent entity streaming is.
It's a persistent entity streaming is a system that allows us to persist the entire game world and restore it from disk so that it's never lost and changes from players are meaningful.
And what's that look like to the player? How will players know if PES is working or not?
They're gonna know because every time they come back to the same server, the state will be the same. So if you leave a ship, a can, or any kind of items in the world, it'll stay there.
Who's got a coffee cup in the forest?
Or it'll be blown on that server forever.
But part of this is something that cleans up the junk afterwards, right?
Yeah, some items will be covered under.
I feel like this isn't a conversation.
They'll get recycled, right? Because obviously we need some kind of janitorial system behind the scenes. But there also are discussions about gameplay to do that, to help players, to get players to help us clean up the game world. But yes, that's a new avenue that persistent entity streaming.
That's the perfect tutorial. Get the newbies to new objective, pick up 10 bottles and put them in the trash, and then you can go get your ship.
It opens up.
All right, so we brought everyone up to speed on what PES is. Let's get to the updates. Now, last time we heard anything was from Chris's letter from the chairman back in May, where we'd just dropped something on the ground, shut the servers down, brought the servers back up, and it was still there. What's happened in the last 3 months?
So the team, which is a fairly large team at this point, has been working really hard to get our first stage delivery to what we call game dev, which is our main branch. What that means is we've moved from a prototypical work branch into what everybody in the company is using to develop the game. And so that's the big achievement, is now the technology is in the game dev branch. So everybody is using it in day-to-day, day in, day out testing. So all the bugs appear, they're right in our faces. We fix them right away. It's been a bit of a crazy time, but that's the big achievement in the last three months, is that we've stabilized the technology enough so that the entire company can now be working on it.
I mean, that's good. I wonder if never mind.
Define crazy.
Define crazy, everything being on fire, this technology touches on every subsystem in the game. So transit was busted, stuff was persisting in the wrong locations. You couldn't log into the game because obviously with PES comes a new login flow to get players into the game, because we need to bring your items into a new database. So that entire system was also rocky to get in.
Talked about that in the monthly report.
Because there's a lot of cases to deal with, like timeouts, if you have too many items, what happens if you have too many items, and dealing with all the different stages of the login, from authentication to you being actually spawning in the game. And so it's been a lot of debugging, encountering issues on different types of machines, because when we start, all the developers have some pretty good machines on those feature branches, but when we move to game dev, now we're exposed to all kinds of different hardware, and timing issues occur. Those are the weird ones.
See, this would have been great to hear like a month and a half ago. I know they probably wanted to wait until they finally got it on the game dev to tell us that it was working, instead of just being like, hey, we're struggling to get it on the game dev, but we're still working, which is a very CIG thing. But I think this would have been like fine to hear more about over the last couple months.
It's defined. They're really difficult to trace, in fact. But so that's been the craziness, is getting exposed to way more machine types or users as well, right? Like the game requires a lot of resources to run when we develop locally, and so sometimes one service doesn't start on somebody's machine, and that causes all these crashes to start being reported, and now we have to investigate them. And so that's been a bit of it's the real-time effect that makes it crazy. It's like, we're not making technology in a bubble anymore where everybody's using it. And so that makes it really, really difficult to follow. But it's been fun finally get the technology in the hands of people that can really adjust it for the game and for the players. And so that's been fantastic.
So that's been the last couple months.
It's very nice to hear another update on it making progress, though, even if it's not in the PTU or Evocati, even though we're not actually seeing it yet. The fact that they've gotten it past where it was with the letter from the chairman, and they're testing it in some realistic way with actual game stuff going on is more good news. I'm happy to hear it.
But where are we at right now?
So right now on the technology side, we're in bug fixing mode, right? And identifying the elements that are left that we are still, rough around the edges. So I don't want to call it polish. It's really bug fixing, bug testing, stabilization. Stabilization is the right word. That's what we're doing right now. So it's feature parity and making sure everything works the way it should.
Make sure it's won't kick us out every time.
New team that's kicking in work, which is deployment teams, right? So this is taking the technology that we have working on a game dev build and locally, and basically breaking it up into a lot of small services that run in the cloud. So the operationalization of the technology, that's what we're really focusing on now. It's like a dependent project, right? So this allows us to basically bring the game to you guys. That's where we can do PTU. So PTU is a lot larger than a developer running the game on his machine. Even though there's tons of services when we go to the cloud, we've got operators that deploy that on multiple machines and scale this out. This is made to scale. So now it's about testing that's true. So we've got the technology is working. Now we're trying to scale it out to the cloud, see, how many users we're taking in there, the weight of the entities, how many entities we end up having in the databases, can they reload fast enough, testing all of the facets of the assumptions that we had, but really getting this technology ready to be deployed for our players to play on.
I really would love to hear some of those numbers they're getting. I know they won't give them, they'll wait until it's something that can be actually in front of us, but I'd love to hear them say, like, I don't know, hey, we were able to have 6 shipwrecks around an outpost and none of them despawned for 4 hours, and like people came and jumped on top of them and hid stuff inside of them, and like they were just stayed there. That'd be cool to hear, because that's a decent amount of stuff. Like that's 6 spaceships in one spot just sitting there indefinitely, which is kind of awesome.
Change in server player counts had any effect on PES testing or its development?
Well, at first we thought it was going to have an effect, but the reality is the same amount of entities get stored, whether 100 players are simulated or 50. So no, for the moment there is no side effect to having more player caps, because obviously there's more entities being changed, but ultimately for the same amount of players online, whether they're divided on 50, 100 players per server doesn't change anything for PS.
Great, awesome. But what's next? Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? It's a straight line to deployment, right? That's the only thing that matters right now is to make sure that the technology can run in the cloud properly, that it scales out, that if we have more players coming in, either in a short period of time or in a long period of time, that we can, add more provisioning, add more machines to run it, making sure it operates well at scale. So when, all of you guys are online, to make sure that everything's functioning properly, that we recover from errors. This tech comes with a lot more observability than the previous systems that we had. So we have tons of graphs and
graphs.
data that's coming in from the system operating. We're, the teams need to get used to this to be able to identify problems, to be able to help support. We have a bunch of new tools that we're also working in the last stretch here to allow game support to help players that have issues. Character repair is something that we're starting to work on. Mind the word here is not character reset, but character repair, which is something that we can now do that we could not do before. So
fix things without deleting things.
To not, just destroy people's inventories and items, but really go and fix one issue on so that they can keep playing. So,
nice.
We're trying to get that in before we launch it because we think that would be very beneficial.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
If there are corruption events again.
Let's hear it for quality of life changes. That's a good one.
To not have those, but better safe than sorry. Right? So that's really the work now. Is login flow and PES is just stabilization and deployment so that we can launch it. So it's beeline for 3.18 is all. It's like we're banging on it until it gets in properly.
Now, I know we don't like to do dates, but we got a whole lot of player testers waiting to help bang on the pipes. You wanna forecast anything?
Oh no, I'm not even gonna try to gamble on that one.
Good choice.
We have it running in the cloud. It's running, right? But before we're comfortable not sending the ETF team into a just fire drill, that's gonna be There's a big difference between testers, internal testers, developers using the system, and when we get real users on it, it's completely different, right? And so it's hard to say for me. I can't.
We break things good.
That's fair. Now, before we let you go, I want to reiterate that PES isn't a traditional feature like players are used to. When it works, Star Citizen isn't going to look any different. It'll just be another step closer to functioning like we've always intended to. It's a major step forward in stability when all is said and done.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not going to have wipes anymore because there's always data changes that will require us to do that, but we're really hoping that the technology will allow us to have consistent data, which we don't always have right now. Every player's had horror stories of how losing their moby glass or their eyes, which is incidentally one thing I discovered in this
skull
is that if you don't have eyes, you don't see markers in your visor. That's an interesting one. So trying to make sure that
there's that guy from Sandman,
sure that the data is safe and sound. So obviously less corruption. So that's the first thing we expect. Second one, stuff will persist. And to be honest, at this time, we don't totally know what that's going to mean when we put real players in it, right? So
right.
We do have life cycle systems and cleanups and all that stuff. Yes, we've planned for that, but we don't yet know what you guys will do with it. And that will greatly affect how the technology functions, right, in the end. So that's going to be interesting to see. So as a player,
see, that right there is what I'm talking about.
It's there until that server gets, wiped.
Can that actually happen?
But by default, every server will just persist. Like you said, it's a stepping stone technology. Really, what this means is behind the scenes, the simulation and the replication of the game. So simulation is the stuff that runs the physics and the rendering and the AI.
For everybody who's been on my stream, the other day, I was trying to give a good description of how server meshing works, and the key two parts of it, I kept saying that it separated the simulation from something, and I couldn't remember what that other something was. That's the line. And everybody that I've talked to who's worked on server meshing, the new version of server meshing, different from what they originally had planned back in 2018, 2019, has said that's the big key difference between this model and that one, is that separation of the simulation and the replication of data.
So simulation is the stuff that runs the physics and the rendering and the AI, right, is one thing. And the replication, which is sending updates and the state of all these entities as they're being simulated, this used to be like this, right? And now with PES and the game server, this is split into two. And that's the big achievement that PES allows us to do. Yes, we get persistent state. That's awesome. That's great. But the real thing is that we separate simulation from replication. And that allows us to do server meshing after that. And that's the reason why we're doing this.
All right.
There's been a lot of discussion about that, about if there's any difference between server meshing now and before. And that's the big one to remember.
Last question then. How do you feel?
Good. I feel good. Tired, but
probably,
we're not.
This dude's probably sick of the work right now. Like, oh, it's been 3 months of hell. Give me a break, please. Oh, it's September. Let me go home
Stretch. So I'm happy. I'm happy about where we are. I'm happy that the company now can use the technology and see what it's like to persist everything. I mean, our dev servers are now littered with, stuff flying around, which is cool. But I know I feel good. I feel encouraged. Also stressed out because we need to scale it, right? So it's that 10% that takes 90% of the time, right? So that's the effect I'm a bit stressed out for, but it's okay. I feel good about it.
All right, Benoit, thank you for your time, man.
Thank you, man.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully, it's that persistent entity streaming may not be the most visual of features, but it is the next big step in.
We can tell by all the B-roll in this episode.
Truly leave their mark. The last major milestone that'll make server meshing possible, and that it's still heading your way in the upcoming Alpha 3.18. Now, thank you for taking this ISC detour with us this week, but don't worry, we've still got 4 more episodes left this quarter where we'll be covering things like hull stripping, cargo refactor, the new 600i and MSR crash sites, and more, as well as meeting the performance capture team and exploring their new facility next door.
Did he say salvage?
Performance factor, the new stuff this quarter where we'll be covering things like hull stripping, cargo refactor, capture team, and exploring their new facility next door. And then maybe we'll stop by. His people are talking to my people. We'll see what we can make happen.
Chris?
For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
So, there was no bad news. That's okay. There wasn't really a definitive sort of statement on when it's coming. I think we saw something about it going to hopefully PTU testing by the end of this month, September. So I guess we didn't really need anything here. What this felt like was basically just this was a status update. A status update that probably could have come a little bit sooner, but it's good that they put one out. There's no new information in this. Everything that was said here has been said elsewhere. This is a nice concentration of it for people, I guess. And it does kind of put into context how important this is to server meshing. But overall, this was just a status update. They basically let us know, hey, it's working for us. We are going to keep working on it until we can send it to PTU. And honestly, there's no way for us to get any better information than that. And besides just getting it for ourselves. So we will, I guess, wait until we hear about it going to Evocati, and then we start the clock, because until then, it's all up in the air, I think. And even after then, it's going to start going out to wider testing. And that's when the real problems come out. So we'll see what happens. It's cool. It's an update on persistent entity streaming. We can't get much else. This is a big deal. And hopefully it comes soon to our hands. See y'all next week.